Hey everyone, thank you very much for waiting. Glad to have you here. I'm glad to be live. Oops. Wow, there's some echo. Sorry, I was checking if it worked and it seems like it does. So there we go. We've got it all set up now. So thank you all very much for joining me. Really cool to have you all here and excited to be here with you. Sorry for the delay in time. Just a few things got knocked on. And therefore, which is why I was delayed and late. Hey, my friend, how you doing? Thank you for joining me, everyone. If you do want to say something in the chat, please do, because the more we talk, the more we get to know each other, and also the more we can talk about certain things that maybe you all particularly want to know, certain subjects. What we're going for. Hi, Jeremy and Alex. Nice to see and talk to you all. One of the things that we're going to be going through is my Blocktober kind of progress and breaking down what I'm doing with the level, build some with you so you can all see where I'm going with it all, and kind of go from there. If you have questions about level design and Blockout, obviously now's the time to ask them. So I've got my little checklist here. So intro done. So then we're going to talk about, I'm going to break down props. Okay. And then do level breakdown, and then answer questions along the way. So yeah, for those of you who don't know, it is Blocktober. This is just a place where I can sketch, like a digital whiteboard, where I can sketch out some plans and talks. So it is Blocktober, and I have been taking part by doing some small levels, but also I've set my challenge of creating an art gallery combat space for a third-person cover shooter, no game in particular, but breaking it down with it. So we're going to be talking about how it's progressed, and you can see the progression as we go through and what goes on with it and how I got here. So, sup Jack, or should I say Charles, nice to have you here, sir. So what we're going to first do before I actually get on to breaking down the level is talk about kind of where I went from the first kind of blockout phase. Thank you, Alex. Yeah, a little sketchboard. It's much smaller and more convenient than an actual whiteboard, even though the whiteboard looks cooler, I won't lie. So we're going to talk about kind of where I went and why the choices I made from what we originally saw. Let's actually just show you, I'm going to go back actually. Show you what we had before. If I just quickly just move some stuff around. Props. Yeah, this is all the sexy side level design you come to see. And I think that's it. So that goes into props there. Okay. So the last time we kind of all saw me was we had built out a certain section of the level. Hello, Federico. Nice to have you here, buddy. But we'd only kind of done this kind of corridor and the start of this section here. So what's kind of happened from where you last left it, if you saw my last live stream, there is still a video of that on YouTube, but no longer on Twitch because it removes it after 14 days. But on YouTube, you'll be able to find it. I then went out and, as you can see, did the first kind of draft of said blockout. So it's now got all the kind of props. I kind of know what spaces have happened, what the spaces are, sorry, and how they all are put together. And then just a couple of things that actually changed with this. If we just minimize this and bring this across for us. Okay, so this here, for those who don't know, shaders, I am just using no shaders in particular. I've either used the ones from Blockout that it provides in Unity, or I've just made some basic custom ones, and I mean just create a new material and change things slightly. But I'm using Blockout on Unity, which is free at this core, free, and that's what I'm using at the minute. I'm also using the third-person shooter. I can't remember, is it the third-person shooter pack or something? It's one that you buy on the Unity store, and that's what allows me to play with the character that I have. But yeah, as you can see, this is what we have here. But I started to notice a few things that didn't quite fit right when I actually got in and played it. So the first thing is this corridor was way too short. It just didn't feel right. So I ended up extending this quite a bit, because the plan is for this corridor is the fact that players will come in here. Oh, where are you located? Collectibles. We'll get onto you in a second. Spoilers. So the player would come down, and there would be like an enemy around about here or here, and the player would have to take some cover, and either they had the choice to shoot them at the range where they were, but this would then alert other people, or have to move around and follow them into this room, as the patrol would be kind of this sort of loop around here. So therefore I had to make it longer to also, to one, encourage the sense of movement, two, not have the enemy right on top of the player, and three, it just felt too cramped. So I kind of had expanded upon that with this here. Another thing that we'll see with the big difference is that you could come into this small kind of loot room and then just come out into these kind of combat spaces here. And that never made the spaces feel separate enough. And I think that was a really one which just made it a bit of a shame. So there's a couple of things I did. I kind of lowered, I dropped down about a meter between these floors, as well as I did create a frame, even though there is no actual, Jacob. So even though there is no actual door frame per se, there's still an illusion of separation by using this, so that way they felt that there was a disconnect between the spaces, so that there was a transition between them. Another thing that I liked was I'm kind of starting the player higher up here, so then basically what happens is you're constantly moving. The further you move and progress, the lower that you go within this level. And the reason that I like that is it kind of represents that kind of depths of hell. You know, in order to progress, you end up going further and further down here, as you can see. We even come down here, and then finally coming down here. And then in order to finish up the level, you would go up kind of again as if a triumphant kind of view from it. What's up, Alex? And this way, again, you would see how that would kind of relate with the emotions of it as well. So that was one of the big things that I was focusing on with it. Sorry, I thought I dropped something or felt something drop on me. Anyway, getting distracted. So that was one of the big differences, was the progressing of it coming down. I also think one of the reasons it's better for this is if everything was flat, it just wouldn't... Nice little barrel roll for you. But it just wouldn't feel great. By breaking it up, even with just some micro elevation, because I knew there wasn't going to be, for example, 2 stories or 2 floors to use. By you still using some kind of stairs, you break up the space, give an advantage during combat, kind of break up line of sight as well, and kind of have a different reveal. And also, these help with decision points as well, because you've got the higher ground to plan your move and then progress your way down and this sort of thing. So that's kind of where I went with one of the elements too. Another element that I went with was this room here. Like I said, it didn't feel like... Not only was there a bigger disconnect with the rooms, but what's the difference, shall we say, between you coming and going through here or you going around here? Nothing. There isn't, because you approach this area from the same angle and the same point of view. So what instead I tried to do with this instead was kind of have this separate space here, and then if you wanted to come into the small room, you can actually then pop out at the side here, get a bit more stealthy advantage as well. So you can see this space from 2 different views now and 2 different angles. So that way, again, you can have... that way the experience feels different depending which way it takes, and makes that choice more meaningful as well for the player. So that was kind of one of the big ones. Jack, you ask yourself, oh wow, you used more landmarks that separate the room. Is this supposed to be an interior, right? So yeah, this is an interior space, my friend, and we'll talk about kind of local landmarks that I use moving forward with it. But this here is what some places call as L0 or pre-alpha kind of pass of a space, where you kind of just have the blocks. That's kind of it. It kind of works for the combat, and then, you know, that was how you'd leave it. So that's the first block out. Now, this is what moves us on to the actual next point. Before we go any further, does anyone have any particular questions about blocking out, or any other sort of just questions that I can answer around here for any of you? If not, we'll move on to what my next point is. So I'll give a couple minutes on that one with it, and I'll pretend I know how to drum. Pretty good drum solo. So yeah, L0, yes. So what I mean by L0 is, depending on different studios, they have different definitions of kind of what other stages are. There are L0 is just kind of the basic blocks. There's nothing in it. It's kind of the level. It's there at its basic form. You can run around the space and that's about it. L1 is where you start to reshape it. You maybe add the mechanics that weren't there before. Maybe you have simple enemy pass. L2 to L3, they're kind of like your beta to almost complete sections where loot passes in, art's now in, so now you iterate on top of the art, and that's kind of how it goes from there. Again, different places have different definitions for it, and that's roughly how that will move through it. And that's kind of where I left it for a while. I got busy with other things, but I always knew I wanted to come back. But also, one of the things that's interesting with level design for different studios is the fact that some places will just have it where the level designer only puts simple blocks in this space, right? That's kind of it. You know, if this was L0, my L1 would then be changing these blocks and moving them around to best suit the combat, adding in the AI, and going from there. However, one of the things that kind of like struck me when I was doing this was, if any of you just came in and saw this level, and I said, oh, walk around, what do you honestly think this space is, just looking at these simple blocks? Some of you might have got art gallery, but I would have been surprised if you did get art gallery from it. And that's when I kind of started to put my own kind of rules together with how I should progress and proceed with what's next. Don't save. And that's when I started to move on to the next kind of blocks and steps moving forward. Now, as you see, this was the original cover objects and I had the architecture. But what I've gone and created are these LD props. Now, there's a reason behind sort of why I created this. One of them is what we just talked about before, where it allows someone who's coming into this space who doesn't know from the design brief or is first time seeing it, kind of wraps around their head about what this space will be. So I created these kind of level design blockouts here. But what kind of went forward from there is when speaking with Scoop. For those of you who don't know, Scoop is the technical director at Ubisoft Reflections, technical level design director, and a previous mentor of mine. And he was the one that came up with this task. So I kind of showed him a bit more, and one of the things that we did in Division, I'll see if I can quickly find a picture as well for you. But one of the things we did in the Division, and it was a really effective way to help with blocking out levels, to help communication with artists, was that we would color code our cover. And do I have it here? Awesome. Okay, let's just put this here for everyone. Okay, so what we have here was, that's kind of like an L1 pass here, but you can see we have orange blocks, which means it's high cover, and yellow blocks, meaning that's low cover. And one of the reasons that's super important is the fact that you can see that it's come here, how you can see that they have turned these blocks into actual assets here. But what it does is it gives artists creative freedom to then decide, oh, well, what are these going to be? Are these going to be beams? Are these going to be pipes? All of these things here, which again helps the artist get the freedom, because obviously we want to make sure that the artists feel involved. They obviously are involved. They're a crucial part to making any game, and it just helps with a certain form of communication where, again, even if me and the artist haven't worked together previously, they will instantly know, okay, I need to replace these blocks with high cover or low cover, and again, they have that freedom. However, as I mentioned, each place is different. So another way that other places like to do it, for example, is because again, looking at blocks like the one that I showed in Division it's not always fun or visually helpful for certain directors or leads who are reviewing your work. So you might help to create different kind of LD props to help sell that. I've got a computer screen here, chair, kind of different planters here. There's a statue in a glass case, cupboards, all of that. But what I decided to go through even more, and speaking with Scoop, was making sure that they still kept that kind of vibe we spoke about, which was kept to the Division, where I had suggested where I have blue for your high cover and orange for your low cover. So even though that I might place a shelf in a level, that doesn't restrict the artist. It just means that this is a suggestion. So if they know that there's a table which is a low cover, they might replace it with some sort of boxes, but they need to know that it's low cover. Same with one of these, as I mentioned before. So again, it's just instant readability that helps the artist understand. And as well, just gives me a little bit of also understanding how the space is going to work. Now, this is a very good piece of advice I actually got from Peter Gellenser, who was a senior level designer at CD Projekt Red and previously at Ubisoft Toronto. And one of the things that was really smart, what he said, was by having just a computer screen, you can actually, because there will be offices in certain, obviously, games that is being made, obviously, but when you're doing that, you can understand how it restricts. Oh, that's really bugging it. But you can understand how it restricts the view. So now I can't see as much, or maybe that's going to get away in the way of fire, in the line of fire. So again, it just helps you with understanding how the propping is going to go, even before you actually have an art pass on it itself. But again, you've got to be careful with this one. And again, it's all up to different kind of, you see, like I've got little art paintings up on here. But you have to make sure it's clear and understandable and applied across the entire team for this to be effective. And again, just make sure that you don't limit your artists from all of this, because you don't want the artists to feel that they have to stick directly to your layout, because sometimes they do amazing things that help us. So yeah, just a big thing for it. Hey, that's Creepy Pie, right? I like your name, that's brilliant. Oh, awesome. I'm glad that you'd like it like that and enjoy listening to it. I don't know how much motivation I provide during the workout session, but thank you. I've just been getting back into the gym myself. So yeah, thank you very much for your kind words. Will this be overstepping onto art director territory? No, because this will obviously be communicated throughout the entire studio, having these kind of rules and sets. And like I said, these are suggestions. If I'm working on the level that I'm working on, which is an art gallery level, then honestly, they will know that as well. It's not me just picking something out of thin air, but with me just placing one of these, as I said, they can replace that later on. That's totally fine and understandable. These are to help communicate, but it's also important when they're going through a level, because if we look at my walls versus ground here, but if we start having this and everything, so say I kept, you see, I'm in cover, sorry, and I decide to keep these grey boxes for cover, how would they know as the artist that these are important versus the ground or the architecture? It's, oh god, Seb's here. Oh no. Seb. If you can all welcome Seb. Seb is another level designer that I work with who's an honest to God badass and great level designer, but I will deny that to the day I die, even that this is recorded. But yeah, they wouldn't know that this is important if everything was grey, if everything was kept grey during the block out. Seb, not Sev, sorry mate. But that's my poor English accent. Creepy Pie, I'm glad that you're enjoying this one and you're enjoying the podcast, mate. So if you want to chat level design, obviously just let me know, mate. And well, yeah, one of the cool things is, again, like I said, these are just suggestions. And by having these color-coded, artists know that these are super, super important, that these are vital to the actual block out itself, so they shouldn't change these, that this is crucial for gameplay purposes. Thank you, Seb, mate, you know. Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why. You're not stepping on art director territory because these are only suggestions. Now that we've got that kind of out of the way, let's show you kind of what's happened next with my block out itself. Sebby boy, I'm waiting and expecting you to come up with some good feedback, alright, mate? Okay. Now we're going to kind of break things down because things have changed a fair bit from what we originally had on all the blockouts with it as well. One of the things I did as well, and I probably went a little bit overboard, so do keep this in mind, is by me creating these simple paintings, these are probably not needed at all. It does just help sell the environment though, which is an important factor. And that's kind of one of the things, you know, to keep in mind. Yeah, check on that. I'm simultaneously streaming. I don't know how to stream on Discord yet. I will figure that out because we have a very good community on Discord. So I will do that. For anyone also who is watching and is unaware of my community, we have got a great community about level design and all of the amazing things with all of this on patreon.com/level design lobby, where you can become a member of the Discord and the community, where we talk about level design, share our work, and talk about portfolios, how we can make them better. All of that you can find again on patreon.com/level design lobby. Creepy Pie says, one thing I found useful is having blocks that are 1 second. Oh, right. Okay, I get you. He says 1 second long. That allows him to measure the distance. So that's a really good idea, actually. I've not actually heard of that one done, but that's a really good one, mate. I really like that. What we do is we have these kind of rulers. Obviously, you have your grid space here, and then we kind of have an understanding of time sometimes. So you understand how long it'll take you to run. I don't know, 3 meters, 5 meters, 10 meters, stuff like that. Because in some games, there's vehicles. Again, depending on what you're working on and all of that, can move around with things. But yes, as I mentioned, I went a little bit OTT with these, and you'll see some other ones, like even in here there's some bits and bobs. Then you can see like there's walls of text, and as mentioned earlier, little statues inside of these glass as well. Ooh. Yeah, OTT, over the top. Sorry, mate. That's what I said. Yeah, I've got a really dumb face when I'm reading that. But, yeah, so I went in a bit more detail than probably should have been. But the reason that I've kind of done this is for the fact that, again, it's selling the space. As I mentioned, with the block out I showed you at the beginning, you probably wouldn't have guessed that's an art gallery. But by me sticking it on some simple paintings and some different kind of sculptures, you instantly know that this is kind of a space that would be used for a more fancy area. And that's kind of where things have gone with it. I'm going to answer some questions here, and then I'm going to start to kind of break down section by section what kind of I've done and why I've done it, because you can see that there are changes, but you might not necessarily understand why I've made that changes. But first, let's go through and answer some of these questions. Okay, Pain, the Pain, alright, scaring me with your intimidating name, goes, what about laying down a basic texture? Like, suppose it to be a field of mud. If you put down a simple placeholder mud texture, well, the cover and other forms are a grey box. So, what I am saying with what I do there, the Pain, is I've created my own rules for this, right? You will color code in very different ways. I'll bring up some pictures in a second about another like organic space I did for a different course. But I've created kind of my own colors for this. So anything with this grid is for level design in terms of it's important for that. Anything not using the grid, like these green are for plants, these are paintings, and this here is kind of a chandelier or like artsy lights. They don't have this, so they know that they're just proppage. you will need to create that as a whole in your game, as a team. And that's how you can kind of figure out. Now, mine's an interior space, so I don't need to worry about organic kind of materials changing throughout this level. So there's not going to be a desert halfway through this, or you walk through a river, in which case, yeah, it's better to use blue to represent water, green for grass, etc., etc. And let me just try pull something up just to show you what we've got here. Hold on a second. Yep. Okay. I think it was... Let's just double check this one. Okay. Yep. Do I actually can make this bigger? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so here's what I did on the CGMA course earlier. And sorry for the picture quality, by the way. But again, we use different textures for that. So the grey would be more mountainous kind of rocks. This is kind of mud, dirt, and then the green was more grass texture. You can see there's another brown for some sort of mud that maybe this cart got stuck in. And this is kind of how we moved it, you know, again, grey for buildings. Pay no attention to that because that was kind of a mashup near the end, but again, helps with color coding. You will need to set this in blue for water. You will need to actually set this up with your team yourself. That's kind of one of the most important things with it, is it's okay, as you're saying, Payne, about using textures. If it's going to be level design though, I would still make sure that the colors, if important to level design, have this grid on it, because metrics are super important to level design. So therefore you should really go for and make this understandable metrics as well, because it also communicates to the artist that this here should be 4 meters wide. So that way no one's just judging it by eye. It's important for level design that you have this gridded texture when you're making stuff. So I hope that answers your question, mate. Creepy Pie, I'm always going to read that the wrong and pornographic way, so god damn you, and I'm not going to say it. Yeah, so when you're saying he agrees about having make sure the common distances are known, it's super important. Metrics are key. I think I've talked about metrics in multiple different episodes. I even spoke about me setting up my metrics before I created this, so it is important with this. He then asks, how in depth do you go with your white box? I've noticed a small knockdown chair there. Is that something you do early or later on in the design? That's a good question. So this one came in, the chair for example, came in a little bit later. When you saw at the beginning, I don't know if you saw, but we'll just put it on again. Oh, I see where I've gone wrong here, folks. Let me just get everything aligned. It's also important to make sure when you are doing blockouts that you have correct layers. I think layering really helps. Like, even if I just want to quickly remove the roof, we can do that to get a nice top-down view. But if we just turn on cover and turn off props here. So I didn't add it in then. That comes a little bit later where I'm concerned. The most important thing for me, because this mission space is only for combat. There is no other beats to it. It is just a small combat space. The reason that for me I do it later is the most important thing is getting the cover down and making sure that feels good. Now, it won't always necessarily feel the best. Iterations will come up on top, as we all know. But for me, it's super important to make sure that I only focus on this kind of space, which is crucial for good gameplay. I then do add it in later on. Now, the reasons for that is the fact that, as I mentioned before, the same with adding these computer screens here, is the fact that this will help me understand how the actual space will read before the art gets in it. Because I've had times where I put down a desk and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a great line of sight here. And then suddenly noticed, oh, I can't see. Like even here, for example, this is a great example and we'll talk about how I tackled it. But do you see how if I just remove props for a second and put in cover, do you see how easy and noticeable these window and door is now before I even actually have any props in here? So that makes the space super readable and I'm like, yes, that's how it should be. But then if someone wants to come in, oh, cancel, oh, that would have, that wasn't so bad. But then I remove it. It's now harder to see that by having the computer screen. And what's great about doing it in the kind of stage of design is now I'm like, oh, okay, this is a problem. So how do I solve that problem? Before I actually jump in, before I actually come back to it and art's done a pass, because this can lead to, trying to figure stuff out quicker. It's the rabbit hole. What is it with... Okay. Did you consider jump for your players in the level? I'm assuming this is Division-style gameplay. I did consider jump, but because of the fact that we have in what I'm using from... I can't remember who's made this one, but the jump's not exactly great, and it's super kind of... Yeah. Because it's not great, I didn't really want to use jump. As you mentioned, it's more kind of a grounded thing. And also, because of the fact that it was Scoop who gave me the metrics that I had to keep my level in, which, what was it? I think it says in the picture. No. But he gave me certain metrics, and with that I knew that I couldn't fully take advantage of the jump. And also I said it doesn't feel great in the setup I currently have. So if it doesn't feel great, I'd rather stick to what feels better and play on that. So that's where I went with that one with it. Unity and UE4 have built in like BSP and Pro Builder. Yeah, I mentioned I prefer doing stuff from kits than I do stuff like BSP and that. I think BSP and Pro Builder give you great senses of freedom and much more for kind of organic levels. But for me, I kind of knew that this was going to be an interior space. It's better and easier for metrics to have those kind of level kits snap together in order for me to use them, and ends up being better because of that, I believe, with it. So, okay. Oh, Jeremiah, Creepy Pie just answered the question, which was where can you find them? You can find the, as we mentioned there, but the one I'm using for Unity is definitely is called Blockout, which I really definitely recommend because it's free and it's a great tool that helps me use this space. And I can't mention anything about Cyberpunk. This is nothing to do with that at all. This is a separate thing. As much as I'd love to, this has got nothing to do with it. This is only level design lobby stuff, only focusing on this art gallery third-person cover shooter that, again, is just solely personal work. Anything I say here does not represent anything about that side of my work. This is purely personal work that I'm sharing here, guys. Okay, Jack says he likes to mix it up with BSP Mesh. That's fine, mate, honestly, as long as it creates a good level, but just make sure that, again, color core that matches your kind of rules that you've set up. And David asks, do you think it's easy to build a level in something like Maya? I don't know, because I have not used Maya or Blender like in a long time. So I wouldn't even know how to build like right off the bat. It'd take me some time. I personally prefer doing it in a game engine simply for this simple feature of I click play and it's going to embarrass me with its loading time. But I can do this. This is so quick, and any change that I make, I can instantly test it and play. Compare that to as I slide down the stairs slowly like a badass. But yeah, this is probably one that I prefer to do it just because it's easier to come in and test your changes compared to exporting, importing, and then going from there. That's why I prefer it. But again, I don't have enough experience to understand the pros, the full pros, compared to other LDs. So I'm not fully educated enough to make a full comment, but I know this is quicker in terms of jumping in and playing. That's something that I do like with it. Okay, now that we've answered most of the questions here, let's move on to kind of the next kind of steps with where I went with things from this as well. So we're going to actually stick on the roof. One of the things that I thought was one of the most interesting debates, I remember like ages ago, this was going on Twitter, is it's really hard to get players to look up. And compared to that, especially with first-person games, but in third-person, it's a lot easier because of how far the camera is back. Creepy Pie asks, so this level's for a shooter, how do you approach the encounter design for your level? Ooh, my friend, don't you worry. I'm about to get to that in a second, so don't you worry. But one of the things that was really interesting with this was with the fact of switching back to third person, I knew I could play with the roof a bit more. And as I mentioned, by putting this computer here, I wasn't actually able to notice the opening as much, because the reason I put a window and a door is the fact that the player can see and understand there's space to make decisions with the encounter as they kind of move through the space. So one of the things that I want to do to try to help with that understanding is actually playing on the roof here. I found a really good, and let me just get this for you all. Let's see, where is it? Oh man, here it is. Okay, so I noticed it was these kind of roofs when I was doing my research with the art gallery, and I loved this. I thought this roof was just so nice, it's so cool, and it, as you see, it matches with their door to make this kind of triangular and jagged. And what I really liked about this was kind of then it had these arrow kind of effect, and with these leading lines, like really drew you to move through this space and really push and pull you in the corridor. And there's this other really nice one I liked. A couple of things I liked. I like this. Most of them are open with pipes. I thought that was really nice, that you could use advantage for that. I liked this dip and this kind of grate compared to this open space with the window and this contrast they have with their roofs in art galleries. I thought that was really nice. And then this one became my real inspiration for the corridor. And it's really cool that, again, this is kind of set at a different angle. It's kind of skewed. It kind of messes with kind of the perspective and how the space is all connected together. And that's when I like took inspiration and decided that I'm going to try and use that. Now, this went through multiple iterations. I didn't just end up with this one because I originally tried the cross, so I had this arrow. Originally, these were flat. They weren't angled down. So there was kind of a different a feeling with each one. And I was getting feedback from a friend. So this time, as soon as you come down and turn the stairs, you're kind of already pulled in to look to the right. So then you get a little bit of a sense to a small opening here. And also with the fact they're angled as well, again, it keeps pushing you towards that direction. So I really liked that. So by the time that you came in, you could see, again, these leading lines just drawing you in. And also one of the things that I like with this space, because one of the feedback I did get on this as well from two great LDs was that it felt really tight. And I kind of wanted that. Like, their feedback was totally valid and everything, but I decided to keep it like this for a couple of reasons. One, I like that tight space. Two, there's just going to be me, the player, and one enemy in this space as well. So that way, it feels the appropriate kind of feeling you want, where everything feels very close and tight together. And then when you have that and compare that with the contrast of this space, where we have these glass planes, raised roof as well, opening up, you really have that bigger contrast and makes that space feel even bigger than before. So yeah, how I dealt with this little computer here is that when you come around that corner, as I said before, you get that nice, again, kind of diagonal kind of view from here going down, and then you can see a little bit here as well. One of the things that I also found that was really interesting with this is when I was blocking this out before, where this planter was, I actually had a door frame here. So that way the player would again see the enemy, but instantly just take cover and could plan their next move. However, this did cause a problem and I decided to make some changes. So this was through testing Creepy Pie that I planned my encounter around, okay? One of the things that I noticed, and I always wanted, was the player could see the enemy and then he'd go his patrol. So say he's kind of either just as soon as we come down the stairs, he starts walking down. Maybe he stops and looks at this painting because he's looking to the right. Again, that helps pull the player's attention to the right here, to the opening. And then would continue on and take this door in the far right and go down there. Which, if the player allowed them to move this way, then they could see that this door is connected. And then when the player kind of moved throughout the space, we can see from this angle, already creating a mental map, that these two doors here are in fact connected. So we know that there's a loop in that space for the combat. So that was a really important thing for me. Yeah, as I said, there was a door frame here, but the reason I decided to remove it was I've just created a choke point, essentially, where the cover is so strong that no one can beat me. I could sit there and camp for all the enemies to come at me until I've eliminated them all. And that, isn't fun. It's not great. It makes the combat easy and just takes away from what I've been working on. And with that, that's why it's important for this. So I know if I, for example, started to take out this guy here, that someone could reinforce over here, or they could come in behind me, meaning this cover is flankable and it's not super strong. Even if I decide to shoot someone from here, I've got this obscuring my view, which kind of hurts me in some regard, and then I've got 2 entry points, even though they're behind me. And the same with this cover here, is the fact that there is these plants, and the cover's embarrassing me in front of you all. Curse you. But again, that's kind of obscuring my view, so I can't really get my clean shots off. Again, not playing fully into the player's favor, insisting that they should probably move through this space as well. And then you've got obviously this nice little painting, which kind of has like a focal point, which kind of leads the player in. So as for designing for the encounter design for this space here for you, Creepy, was the fact that I kind of knew that, and I think this is important, one of my kind of, I don't want to necessarily say rules, one of the things that I always keep in mind when I create a combat encounter is the fact that the first enemy should always be an easy kill, an easy win for the player. When you break it down of something like online games, there, Call of Duty rewards kill streaks, right? And that gives you such an endorphin boost, and you're like, yeah, I'm a badass. In single player, you obviously get up that streak, but we need to make sure they feel strong. So right off the bat, we have the chance for the player to come in, take out one enemy how they want with either range combat. So even though we can start from here and they start all the way down there, that can start to play off one another, but we can kind of zip and zag. And that's one of the things I wanted with this space as well, is if we look at the difference slightly in my 2 layout changes, let's get off walls, get off roof, cover, props. One of the things that I noticed with this, other than this being now empty, was the fact that there wasn't a kind of duck in between. You couldn't move between the spaces. The fact that you had just kind of this long range, and maybe you could pop someone off or get shot through here, and that was kind of it. So what I wanted was a bit of zig and zag, so that way when we did the props, you can kind of see, okay, we've got one here, and kind of move a space like that. So as for the game mate, I think one of the things that's probably weakened my design, and I'll be honest about it, is that I haven't thought of rules or mechanics, or like which universe is this game based in. It has solely just made it as a third-person kind of cover shooter. Ideally, yes, I think it'd be cool to have it as a dynamic object which was shot and it would fall over either to do it, or it'd be cool in a line of fire. Even such things as some trees getting mowed down as well, something like that. And if you see here, we have these statues. That would be 2 meters to stand by, but as these got destroyed, then it would turn to low cover. That's how I kind of imagine it, but again, because it's kind of just a shooter, it's not based on a universe, that's probably one of the things that's probably weakened the design in terms of how you'd imagine the mechanics playing out from it. Sorry there, Jackmate. On YouTube, I got asked, would it make sense within the context of the game for the player to knock the monitor down to cause a distraction? So I'm just saying that because I've kept my game kind of, world free there. What then I think is good for this is, and this works in a couple ways that I was thinking about last night, was you could take him out, and again I've tried to obscure your view as a player from longer distance in forcing the player to kind of get closer, is you could, if you let them go all the way through, you can come into here and they would kind of just do a little loop where they read the text, look at some of this stuff, and then the player can come and stealthily take them out as like that. And that would be a reward. Another reward from this is actually your cover. So when you come out of here, you can kind of obviously stick here, but you can get flanked. But you can come here and you've got this 2 meter cover here, and this is raised, again, having a much kind of higher vantage point. But if you decide to say, screw it, I'm just going to kill this person and make my way through here, you've got less kind of, I'm trying to think of the word, but I'm just going to use the word sexy here. Less sexy cover because they're only 1 meter wide. They're not as strong as say the other one on the other side, 2 meters over here. So less appealing. Appealing was the better word. But cover can be sexy still. God, that's ruined some job opportunities, I swear. But anyway, yeah, so that's kind of one of the things I thought about with it. So that's how I came to this kind of conclusion. By obscuring the view of the player, it would kind of help push them forward. By using the roof here, it helps to bring their eyes to these here. There's no such thing as perfect cover, because even when you're here, you still have enemies' chance getting spotted if you stay there for too long, and you've got someone taking your back here. So I always kind of keep that in mind when I was making these spaces for it as well, and even helping. So when the enemy has this cover, they don't feel like overpowered as well. I'm also obstructing their view. Another thing actually that I forgot to mention with this was if we, for example, just had the low cover here, where if we got rid of those green plants, it actually, from this distance, made it look like it was a dead end, that you wouldn't even know there's any space behind that. So by having these long plants, and then you can see through them to this painting, it absolutely helps make it clearer that there is more space behind that cover. So I thought that was a really cool thing that I just learned about with perspective from it. Creepy asks, when practicing level design, do you think it makes sense to create a level for generic, e.g. shooter, or a specific game? I would actually advise going for a specific game, because also when you're showing it off as a portfolio piece, people will instantly understand the rules of the game right off the bat, so you don't have to explain anything for them. The reason I kind of went with just generic was the fact that this is only for combat. You know, this isn't it's a single player combat space. It isn't something that needs a whole lot of imagination, because you've got some of the rules with the cover already implemented anyway. And that was kind of the logic behind that. But I'd recommend, if you're going to build up a portfolio, do make sure, and I do mean do make sure, that it's more for a game. And if you are going to use a game, especially as an LD, don't come with your own mechanics. I'm not saying come up with your mechanics if you're going to make a prototype for it. If you're not, and you're just making a level for it, only use the mechanics of the game that you're basing it in. So that way, again, it's easier for people to understand. All right? If you're going to make a prototype for that, and why that's better, that's cool. But again, make sure you got something to back it up. It's not just talk, so you don't have to explain anything when they're just jumping in and playing. Would you say this... What do you mean, Jackmate, when you're saying, would you say that this is quite pushing to the player? No, the only reason I don't... Sorry, I've now got what your question means. He's more wondering as, have I gone too hard-handed to push the player? The reason is no, because it's a corridor. You know, like, they were going to go forward in a corridor regardless. They still have the choice to shoot the enemy from here or here, they can still do that. But they'll just don't know that maybe reinforcements will come from here. And then I give the player choice too. You have the choice to kill the enemy either walking or following him. You also have the choice to ignore him or just jump into this space here right off the bat. So that way, again, there's already choice within the first few seconds of the game. That's why I don't feel it's 2. And also, what I'm explaining to you isn't going to feel like that. It's not like I'm sitting down your ear and saying, you should go forward, you should go... Because it's all working subconsciously. Leading lines, obscuring the view. How frustrating this will be to the player, we obviously don't know until we do like a proper ton of play tests. But no, I give the player a lot of choice in combat and choice in how they move through the space already, so I don't feel it's good there for it, matey. Anton B, good to have you here. He asks, it's out of the blue, but can you make a video on game/level design toolkit? What engine is preferred to learn first? Right, okay. Good question, Anton. So he's asking me to make like a beginner's guide on what tools to use. It's not something I thought about. Maybe. I kind of, yeah. I'm not against it. It's just, like I said, just not something I've thought about. What I'd recommend you using now, if you just want to do something quick like what I'm doing, is getting Unity. That can be any version of Unity right now. I'll probably grab the latest. And then obviously this is made with Blockout, which is free. So I'd recommend doing those ones for you, mate. Those will help you straight off the bat to make something. What I will say as well, if you are... Unity doesn't have a great grid snapper. If there is any grid snapping tools out there, please let me know so I can put it in. But do use your snap settings here. So then that way when you hold this, and I think it's control, you can see that that snaps compared to when I move it just like that. So yeah. Oh really? The UT mod kit. Is that the Unreal tool or is that in Unity? Sorry, mate. But yeah, keep that in mind. I will think about it. Like, it's not like I'm saying no, mate. It's like I said, it's just something I never thought about, and it needs to be given proper thought and context for it. And I'd rather make sure if I'm going to do it, I deliver something good to you all, rather than just half-ass it and make it. Okay, ProGrids is one. And yeah, okay. Oh, it's the Epic game. Oh, okay, so this is, I mean, this is in Unity, so I can't grab that, sadly, for this one. But for Unity, I appreciate that. For Unreal, sorry. And Creepy says you can go use ProGrids for grids and snapping. I will grab that after this is done. Oh, V does vertex snapping. All right. And that's in both Unity and UE4, so that's a good tip. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to wrap this up because we've been going for about an hour now, which I was surprised how long this has gone on, but you've all been great company, so I do appreciate it. So we're finally going to talk about, just briefly, this kind of big open combat space here. There's only one thing I want to talk about with this, actually, because I'm still developing it, but yeah, as you can imagine, there's a lot of thought and iterations that already went in for a corridor, what I'm kind of going to be like with a big combat space like this. So a couple of things I wanted to do when doing this one is, these are high cover, but you can see there is a gap at the bottom here. I actually got this tip from Manuel, and for those of you who don't know, Manuel's a senior level designer. He was a former lead level designer at Tequila. Very smart dude. Nothing but respect for Manuel. Really good to work with him. He said a really good tip was, if you've got in an art gallery that you have these kind of big kind of boards that they put art on, is that by having this kind of like 20-30 centimeter gap here, if I've not been seen and I take cover and I can't see an enemy and I'm just trying to study their patrols, because this here is a decision point where I can kind of be like, right, well, how am I going to take on if I got two enemies in here? And I can see, oh, maybe one's doing something in the back here, but I can see his feet. I can kind of now understand where everyone is. So that's an important part to this. Next was kind of how I wanted to make this combat space feel like it was its own space. Now it's clear that this is probably next where the player should go, because it's this massive use of negative space, and also because I imagine most of you are from either America or Western Europe, and well, even in any type of Europe, you're still the same. We read from left to right, So the fact that this is like almost the first thing I see with my eye from how I read spaces and how I read books, it's clear that this is where I should go. So to help make this space feel that this is kind of its own kind of combat area, I've obviously lowered it down so it makes it feel like we're coming down. So there's some borders around here already. By raising certain parts of the roof, it also creates its own volume. I learned this in the CGMA course, which is really great, but it kind of creates like its own hard volumes here. You see that they're kind of bordered up with this and this, so that this space kind of feels like, even though there is no walls in terms of separating me just blitzing it to here, it kind of feels that this space is kind of in its own section by creating that volume. Another thing that I was kind of struggling with was, it's really good to always kind of have like a landmark that you can use to move through that space, where you can always base where you are. And down in this section, it's going to be a statue, like kind of a big statue that will be used for that. So I couldn't and didn't want to use a statue for this section. The reason is that from my perspective, not just an art thing, is each space is going to feel different, right? So the cover in here is kind of more plants and organics that we have with these. The next room we have in comparison, this is kind of desk and there's kind of props, and we have these statues. So we already know that the kind of, not only is the space different by the roof and the contrast, but also by the use of cover, we also know that we're in a different space as well, so the player can have a local landmark around it. And the same with this room here, because we have just giant paintings instead. So for a long time, I was struggling on how I can still have that, but not just copy and paste a statue. And then, again, more research, I figured out that I can just use these chandeliers hanging down. That not only does it help to square the space on, that it's almost like it's a centerpiece for it, but it draws the player's eyes up. Now, these are clear through glass anyway, so we can play around with time of day for how the lighting would work with it later on in one of the different passes. Obviously, this is Blocktober, so I won't get to that, and there isn't going to be an artist taking over this location from me. But again, it helps me as I move throughout the space that I know where I am. Oh, I'm going to have to change this propping because this is blocking my cover. Okay, that's a good test for me. But again, it's something which I can see with my camera at all times, and again, it helps me ground where I am, no matter where I am, that I've got a space to move around and can kind of mentally create a map of where I am in this space. So yeah, by doing this, we created a volume with the roof by raising it and having clear space here. It's easy to understand where we're going with the negative space over here. And instead of relying on something actually on the ground as kind of our centerpiece for the combat, we have something actually floating above it. So yeah, everyone, that's where we're going to wrap up. I do have this kind of little office space blocked out. I think I might change something with here. Ignore all the fucking Z fighting clipping. That's poor on me. But yeah, so I've got this as kind of more of a meeting room. What I have done is I've tried to place little kind of loot. There's ammo, kind of crates and boxes, just for me to understand where I might put them. And then if the player chooses to come this way, not only are they rewarded with this loot, but then rewarded with an alternative path into the space here. And again, because this is recognizable from where they were, it helps create a mental map knowing where they're connected with everything. So yeah, that's where we are. The next one is I'm still going to play around with this a little bit. I'm almost happy with where it is. Like, I think we're almost there, because I got let this get a little bit too cluttered, so now I'm kind of decluttering it. One of the things I obviously want to focus on is if you come here, we can see that there's actually stairs here. So maybe, and look how nice those metrics are to allow me to roll into cover, we can time it where they're not looking. Come in, wait, sneak, oh, I've messed myself, sneak past and go straight into this room here. So again, that's what I'm kind of messing around with right now. And then finally, I'll be going into this, blocking this out. This here is your exit anyway. This will be your bathroom. And then this is going to be like a store you can buy stuff from. These really aren't going to be made too much for combat. This one will support, if some combat broke out into here, they'll support it in some way. But this and this area are the main combat spaces. But overall, I'm very happy with how it's coming along. For sure, I can talk about when it's actually done, kind of where I went wrong, what I've learned from it, how I can make it better. Because I'm going to try and finish this by the end of next week is kind of my plan, fingers crossed. And yeah, I have now got some questions, so let's just do them. The last wrap up. So if you do have questions, do ask them now before I kind of wrap this session up with it. Just put that away. Okay, to the questions. Are you going back to establishing which space is different? Won't this override the artist with an art pass? By override the artists, I don't know what you're referring to, but as in, like, is it too much? No, like, I think it's important. Like, maybe this wouldn't happen. Maybe we don't have enough time or assets to make it if it was a proper game. But by doing this, it's really important. Versus statues, sorry. No, I think both need a local landmark to help establish which room you're in. Obviously, they're different, going to be different in terms of layout. But by having different kind of spaces, not only you interact with, like, the fact that we can come under this, versus when the statue is here, we can only go around it, will play into that factor. But again, like, they don't necessarily need to be the chandelier or the statue. This is me making suggestions for them, so we can talk, me and the artist, back and forth about, do we think that's the right choice moving forward? But we'll do that. And these here, obviously, it really helps right off the bat with having these. So again, the artist can ask me questions. Oh, well, why is this here? And we can talk about it with it from there, mate. So that's why it's going with that one. I am going for actual AI. The AI isn't going to be great because it's just a basic AI, like in this starter pack. Now, when I say it's not going to be great, I don't mean that as an insult on what the amazing team that provided the third-person shooter are. It's just I'm not going to have a complete understanding of it all, so it's just going to be basic patrol paths. And I think the problem with the AI that I find within the starter kit is as soon as they hear a gunshot, they all just swarm you. Now, there might be guard areas which you can put up so they don't leave certain areas, but yeah, that's what it'll be. So that's what is kind of where I'll go with the AI. And that's kind of where I'm going. As a student, I think your videos and streams are a very useful resource. Well, thank you very much. I hope that you enjoy them, mate. That's why they're there, because when I was coming up as a student, I didn't have much resources. There was more resources for art and animation, so I'm kind of trying to help. And if you don't already, obviously you've got my podcast. That is Level Design Lobby. So you can find that. And that is more talking about level design and stuff comes on as well. But you've probably got it considering you're here on my YouTube channel anyway. Does that answer your question, Jack or not? Because you don't seem too happy or impressed with the answer there, mate. Ilya, I hope you pronounced your name correctly. I just joined the stream. Are you working on a game on the side, or are you doing it as a level design exercise? I'm working on this as level design exercise because sometimes I think it's important to just go back and do something small. I think Blocktober is a great place to start and join it all. And also the thing with games, which is I do have a game that I am working on, but obviously there's so much to take into consideration. It's hard to show progress. Well, here is a simple level that I can block out and make quickly and just kind of hand it off, after a certain point that I'm done. So I think that's a one. So yes, I do have a game, but this is more of an exercise to help me come in with it. Oh, thank you. I'm glad I got it in the 1% with it. So yeah, so that was it. It's more of an exercise. I also think, while at work, I learn a lot. And one of the things while you're at work, obviously, is as you grow, you eventually hit parts of the project where you can't do any more level design because you're closing it up. You're trying to finish things. So that's very different. When I talked about L0 versus L3, you're not doing as many big level design choices. You're more moving the cover around, changing patrol paths, all of these things, but the big shape should be done. So me having a chance to see how much I've improved to myself about my level design is super important. Also, how do I make a mix-up of what I've learned? You know, if I'd just done this straight after Division, I probably wouldn't have gone in as much details with art assets, or maybe wouldn't have thought as the roof as much, because I would have just the way that I did stuff in Division. But now it's kind of come out and how I'm doing things differently again each time that I'm doing this. And if I hadn't have worked on the Division, I wouldn't have had a clear color-coded guideline to help me plan this stuff out, or an even better understanding of how third-person shooters work. So it's cool for me, and obviously nerve-wracking to make your own rules and hard sets, because you're like, only got myself to blame if it goes wrong. But I'm excited for this. Honestly, I think it's turning out as a good level. If I handed this in as a test for some reason, man, I'd be super proud of this as a test. You know, not saying that it would get me the job, just saying me as a LD, I'd be proud of it. I know it's only a combat space. There is more stuff to do with different types of levels, downbeats, traversal, other kind of objectives, but I'm excited by it. With it, yeah. So, yeah, there's many things that make a level, honestly, Ilya, like so much that comes into it, especially as you move through and evolve with the project. So, yeah. So this is a nice one for me. And it lets me get involved with Blocktober, because as I mentioned earlier, I can't talk about much stuff that on my job. So at least here I can actually help and break stuff down and show you as well, because I'm still learning. I do not know everything about level design. I am not the best level designer out there by far. So by doing this, I've become a better level designer. And one of the people asked in the question, how often do I playtest? Lots. Like, this is why this space went through so much iterations. I've had three to four people look at this space, just the corridor already, and gone through that. Not only myself playtesting, but every time I make a change, I hit the play button and go through it and test. And like, I guarantee you, this is going to have to change when I actually add the AI in, because this may work perfectly now, but it might not when the AI comes in. So yeah, that's it with it on there. So yeah, with that, you can do it whenever you want if you miss October itself. Oh yeah, so Creepy Mate, you can join in Blocktober wherever it is just a hashtag normally used on Twitter. I don't know if it's used on other social media, but you just create a block out like this, and then that's kind of it. You will then share your updates with people from there. So that's a good one with it. So you can join at any time. But yeah, if you want to join, obviously, the Level Design Lobby community, you can do so. It'll be cool to have you there, bud. Which is, again, patreon.com/Level Design Lobby. Even just for $1 a month, you can join, and we can just chat more on Discord, and you can meet the amazing community that we have here. Jack asks, what you're curious on what a good level test for you would be. So it's a tough one, but literally it's just me playing through it. It is me just hitting the play button, and I'm trying to figure out how that space would go. Obviously there's a lot of the power of imagination, but I know if I came here and then saw an enemy near here, my reaction would be, sugar, just go here. And this is why this one's new to it, right? In the block out, there was only this cover, and that was pulled further forward. When I added this, I was like, that's too long of a dash to get in here without getting noticed. So by having this cover, I know I'm exposed here, but I can instantly go through, and these will obscure the vision from enemies as well. So that's one of the things that I had with testing. I tested because I knew these were here, but I was also just knowing that they were, as soon as this came in, they were going to be blocked. So, well, how do I lead the eye? And I said I originally had them flat. It was a friend of mine who suggested rotating them and then staying the same when it came down when we opened up and removed that wall, that you instantly get that kind of shot where everything feels diagonal compared to this flat space where, again, makes it feel like you've already come in through it. So yeah, stuff like that. There's a lot that makes a test there that helps with it. But everyone, this is where I'm going to actually start to wrap up the live session. I didn't actually get to block anything out, which is a shame because I was going to block it out while we talked. But I hope you still enjoyed it. Nonetheless, you can kind of see where I kind of come from, how I've kind of progressed with this block out to here. And yeah, I hope everything's cool there, team. So thank you all very, very much. I really appreciate each and every one of you for coming on and joining the stream. I will do another one hopefully in a couple of weeks again when it's kind of finished and we can talk about where I went through, what I went through, how I did it, why I did it, and then what I could do better for the next time and what I've learned from this experience from it. So yeah, I hope you have all enjoyed it. And yeah, I appreciate each and every one of you. And say, if you want to join and talk more to myself and the amazing community and just more about level design because you're interested in the subject, please do at patreon.com/level design lobby. All right, everyone, have a good evening or morning, afternoon, no matter where you all are, because I'm going to go make my food for tomorrow to try be healthy and lose a lot of fat off this body. All right, take it easy, everyone, and I'll see you all next time.